Let us explore the Senate map for 2024 using my almost final estimates for every race. Based on the great fundamental advantage the Republican Party enjoys on this map, 538's latest estimate shows the likelihood of the party flipping the Senate majority at 88%. Democrats are defending 23 of the 34 races running for election, including most of the competitive ones. Republican prospects have surged to their highest point yet, at minus 525 according to BetOnline's Senate control market, translating to a 75 to 80% probability of gaining control. These prediction market odds and quantitative forecasts appeal to me since they sometimes offer special insights that complement one another. I'll add links to both resources in the description below for anyone interested. Let us now go through every race and begin to map the solid seats with which neither party will have to blink one eyelid. Generally speaking, safe states are those I expect either party will carry by a double-digit margin. I am at least 95% confident the candidate representing that party on the ballot will win. Beginning with the safe Democratic states down the Pacific coast, we have Washington, where Maria Cantwell, a four-term Democrat running for re-election, is with 58% of the votes. She was most recently re-elected in 2018. In the 2020 presidential contest, Washington voted for Joe Biden by 19 points. It has not chosen a Republican to the Senate since 1994. Longtime Democrat Dianne Feinstein passed away last October in California. LaFonza Butler was named to fill in for her. Butler decided against running for a full term since several prominent Democratic U.S. senators had already entered the contest to replace Feinstein. Attaching Congresswoman Katie Porter and Barbara Lee, L.A. area Congressman Adam Schiff advanced to the general election via the nonpartisan primary set aside for Super Tuesday. He will be up against former Los Angeles Dodger Republican Steve Garvey in what ought to be a simple victory for Schiff. In 2020, California voted for Biden by 29 points. Schiff has led in every single poll by at least 15 points. Regarding the Aloha State, Hawaii native Democrat Mazie Hirono is running for a third term. With 71% of the vote, she was re-elected in 2018, the highest percentage among candidates of either party in that cycle. Let us now travel to New Mexico, another firmly blue state. Re-elected in 2018 with 54% of the votes in a three-candidate contest, two-term Democrat Martin Heinrich was 4 years after Biden easily won New Mexico by 11 points. Heinrich is now seeking a third term. Here the polling average also shows Heinrich with a strong advantage, seated at precisely 10 points right now. Regarding Minnesota, a reasonably competitive state in presidential contests, the most recent poll average between Trump and Harris shows the vice president leading by less than 5 points on average. Democrats have no cause to be concerned, though, about the Senate race, including three-term incumbent Amy Klobuchar on the ballot. With 60% of the vote, she was re-elected in 2018. She has prevailed in every prior Senate race by more than 20 percentage points. On our map, Minnesota shows as solid blue. Similar narrative in Virginia, a peripheral battlefield state on the presidential map. The Senate race is safe blue as two-term incumbent Senator Tim Kaine has led in every single poll by a reasonable margin. Remember Kaine as Hillary Clinton's running buddy from 2016. His average lead right now is 12.2%. Re-elected in 2018 with 57% of the vote was he. Starting in New York, where incumbent Democrat Kirsten Gillibrand is seeking a third full term, Democrats will also hold many states up here in the Northeast. With 67% of the votes, she was most recently re-elected in 2018. While there is strong evidence to indicate New York will trend right this cycle, New York Republicans who nominated NYPD Detective Mike Saparacone as their candidate to challenge Gillibrand will still be facing a major uphill battle in this Biden plus 23 state. Biden got 35 and 33 points respectively in Vermont and Massachusetts, the two bluest states in the country in 2020. From that primary, independent Bernie Sanders, who caucuses with the Democrats, and Elizabeth Warren represent two of his Democratic rivals. In November, both are expected to keep their states firmly blue and hold their seats readily. Then in Rhode Island and Connecticut, both states also feature three-term incumbents seeking re-election, Sheldon Whitehouse and Chris Murphy. Both of them were re-elected in 2018 by more than 20-point margins. Harris should easily win both of these states as well. Up in Maine, closing out the New England region, Two-term incumbent Angus King is among the most well-liked senators in the nation. Like Bernie Sanders, he is an independent who caucuses with Democrats. Thus, this goes down as a quasi-hold for the party. Finally, moving on down to the Mid-Atlantic region. Starting in New Jersey, incumbent Democrat Bob Menendez is going to jail on corruption charges, and the Democratic nominee, Congressman Andy Kim, is greatly favored to succeed him. In 2020, New Jersey voted for Biden by 16 points, and Kim is a reasonably well-liked candidate. While current Democrat Tom Carper is retiring in Delaware, unlike his eastern neighbor, Republicans lack a well-known candidate to oppose Delaware's lone U.S. Representing Lisa Blunt Rochester as she rises to the Senate in Biden's D+19 home state. Maryland voted for Biden by 33 percentage points in 2020, his third-best performance in the nation, and it has not elected a Republican to the Senate in more than 40 years, so Maryland has finally turned back into the safe column for Democrats from probably one of the bluest states in the nation. Nonetheless, the race has attracted more attention than it ought. Given Democratic Senator Ben Cardin's retirement and Republicans' nomination of former Governor Larry Hogan. Hogan not only won 2 statewide elections as a Republican in Maryland, but also left office in 2023 among one of the most well-liked governors in the nation, with a near 80% approval rating. That's almost unheard of in the modern world, and it's mostly why Democrats had to pay time and money for his participation into the contest. Although Angela Brooks, their nominee, is neither a strong or weak candidate per such, the polls now show her leading by a reasonable margin of 11.3% per real, clear polling's average. Hogan is simply dealing with almost impossible odds in a state Trump will most likely lose by about 30 points. With those 15 Democratic seats on the board, the party total has been raised all the way up to 43 seats currently. If Kamala Harris wins the presidency, that is 7 seats short of the minimum needed to uphold their majority. That is, if her running mate Tim Walz keeps the tie-breaking vote she presently uses. Should Trump prevail, however, Democrats would then have to find 51 seats to guarantee a majority, so leaving no margin for mistake. And you'll see why here as we tour the safe Republican states. Utah, Republican nominee Congressman John Curtis to succeed departing Senator Mitt Romney, who most likely would have lost in the primary had he chosen to run after voting to impeach Trump twice, is the first solid red state here. In 50 years, Utah has not chosen a Democrat to the Senate. In the special election, Republican incumbents John Barrasso and Pete Ricketts are both seeking re-election in these solid Trump states over in Wyoming and Nebraska. While Nebraska supported Trump by 19 points, Wyoming voted for him by 43 points, his best performance among all the states. But Nebraska's regular election has grown rather competitive, according to recent polls revealing a close contest between Republican incumbent Deb Fischer and independent Dan Osborne. Though there has been a lot of buzz about Osborne in Democratic circles, it's important to keep in mind that his campaign sponsored every single poll, demonstrating him leading. Fischer leads by 2 points in the likely voter survey, according to the first and only non-party aligned poll from the New York Times and Siena College. Although there is more than enough uncertainty here to leave the race out of the solid Republican column, and that is still much closer than expected, I would not be surprised if Fischer pulls it out by a solid margin when all is said and done. Moving right along, North Dakota and Missouri both have one-term incumbents, Kevin Cramer and Josh Hawley, who ousted Democrats in 2018. By an 11-point margin, Cramer defeated Heidi Heitkamp, and Hawley defeated Claire McCaskill by 6 points. Given North Dakota and Missouri are strong Trump states, both should win second terms by far more wide margins, running as incumbents now, and in a presidential year. From the 1980s, neither Mississippi nor Tennessee in the South have chosen a Democrat to the Senate. As all is said and done, Republican incumbents Roger Wicker and Marsha Blackburn should keep it that way. Republicans Congressman Jim Banks is almost sure to succeed departing incumbent Mike Braun, who chose to run for governor instead of Indiana voted for by 16 points in 2020, up in the Midwest in the state of Indiana, and Democrats aren't particularly challenging this seat here in 2024. At last, in deep red West Virginia, the retirement of Democratic Senator Joe Manchin virtually guaranteed a GOP turnabout. Republicans chose well-known sitting Governor Jim Justice to serve as their nominee to top what should be a 30-40-point victory come November. With a Trump win, that brings the Republican total up to 47 seats, 3 shy of a majority, even just 4 shy with a Trump loss. Democrats have the challenging chore of defending 8 of the 10 remaining competitive seats, 2 in the Trump-won states of Montana and Ohio, and 5 more in states Joe Biden won by less than 3% points in 2020, as I mentioned at the opening of the video: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. There are just Texas and Florida Republican-held seats left, as they otherwise play defense in as many states as feasible. Those are the only semi-plausible chances for Democrats to go play offense. Remember, these Senate races are running concurrently with the presidential election. Thus, split-ticket voting is quite likely to drop even more from the already record lows we have seen in past elections. This means that less people are selecting candidates from other parties for different offices. Just 3 of 34 Senate candidates over or underperformed their party's presidential candidate by more than 10 points in 2020, for example. Right now, just 5 senators representing states won by another party. One of those is Republican Susan Collins of Maine, the only senator chosen in a state concurrently won by the presidential candidate of another party since 2012. Therefore, given the number of seats Democrats must defend in competitive states, this trend renders their chances of keeping their already limited 51 to 49 seat majority quite slim. As we discussed earlier, the regular election for Nebraska's current Deb Fischer most certainly leans Republican. She remains a strong favorite with odds at -300 in the prediction market. As for our 2 remaining Republican-held states, Texas and Florida, the simple fact is that Nebraska is a ruby-red state at the federal level, and it is quite improbable Fischer underperforms Trump by more than 15 points, which is what the independent Osborne would need to even get close. I recently dropped my ratings in both states from likely Republican to lean Republican, and I'm sticking to that for now, even though they seem to be trending back towards likely rather than becoming more competitive at this point. First elected in 2018 by the closest of margins, 50.1% to 49.9% for a raw vote margin of roughly 10,000 out of more than 8 million cast across the states, Rick Scott is an incumbent Republican senator from Florida. After Florida has trended hard to the right since then, this November he is expected to win by a more comfortable margin. Between 2016 and 2020, Donald Trump significantly increased his margin in the state, making it one of only 5 states to do so. In the 2022 midterm elections, Governor Ron DeSantis won re-election by a stunning 19 points, and Senator Marco Rubio triumphed by a stunning 16 points, both incredible landslides by Florida standards. Polling for 2024 reveals Scott regularly leading his Democratic opponent, former Congresswoman Debbie MacArthur Powell. With 3 consecutive polls tapping his margin at less than 4 points, the average margin has dropped to just 5 points, though. This implies Scott is headed for underperformance compared to Trump in Florida. Right now, the former president leads with an already outstanding and widening 8-point margin. Although Scott is not as unpopular as Ted Cruz is in Texas, at this point it would not surprise me if he in fact underperforms Trump by several points. You either love Cruz or you hate him. His re-election in 2018 against well-liked Democrat Beto O'Rourke was by a margin of less than 3 points. With Cruz up by just about 4 points at this point, the polls have nevertheless also gotten rather close, although he now faces another Democratic congressman in Colin Allred, who hasn't quite caught the same magic as Beto did, nor the funding for that matter. In both Texas and Florida, the incumbents ought to be able to ride Trump's coattails to respectable margins. Should Trump also turn the White House, their combined lift the Republican seat total to 50, once more sufficient to flip the majority. Even if Harris prevails, the GOP only has to win one of the 7 still up for grabs here. That includes Montana, where Donald Trump carried more than 15 points in both of his past campaigns. Apart from West Virginia, of course, it is far and away the toughest seat Democrats could hold. The party has been sending signals indicating it might already be out of reach here, since they have begun reallocating money to try and turn Florida and Texas into a last-ditch target for 50 seats. The fact that 3-term incumbent Democrat Jon Tester is running to serve a 4th and is among the most well-liked senators in the nation marks Democrats' only saving grace in Montana. Once more, given it is a presidential year, and Tester has never won a race by more than 5 points, you can understand why the Republican Party would find great pickup value here. Tester's situation is further. Tim Sheehy, a former Navy SEAL who is now a businessman, is an easy nominee in comparison to some of the Republican nominees from previous cycles, which complicates their choice. Sheehy leads by 6.5% points on average over the past 6 polls taken in Montana since the beginning of August, 2 months to go until Election Day. The basic truth here is that Tester probably needs to do Harris by around 20 points. Notably, he exceeded Barack Obama by 18 points in 2012. Again, though, with every cycle it is getting more difficult to do. Montana down is lean Republican here, trending toward likely territory, which brings Republicans up to a presidential race-proof majority with 51 seats. Regarding the 6 states still to be acquired, at this point Democrats have far easier access to them. Right now, Arizona offers their best chance, setting up a head-to-head contest between Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego and 2022 Republican nominee for Governor Kari Lake, the incumbent, Kyrsten Sinema, decided against running as an independent. Given the polls, Democrats have to feel good about this race. Based on the most recent 6 polls, which range from Gallego +4 to Gallego +9, Gallego leads by an average of 6 points. Although Lake has not led in a single poll dating all the way back to January, the consistent lesson is that the range of outcomes is rather broad. Democrats also presently have a winning run going in Arizona. In 2020, Joe Biden turned the state blue, marking the first Democratic presidential victory there since 1996. Democratic contenders also have won the 2018 and 2020 U.S. Senate contests and the 2022 gubernatorial and U.S. Senate debates. With Gallego's present polling advantage and this trend, I'm putting Arizona in the lean Democrat category and staying in the Southwest up in Nevada. Once more, it's difficult to ignore how currently Jackie Rosen, the incumbent, is performing on the polls. Real Clear Politics' average of the past 5 polls shows her leading by more than 4 points. Given how poorly Republicans are performing in Nevada's early vote right now, Rosen's margin has somewhat closed here over the past few weeks, a worrying trend. Sam Brown, the Republican nominee, is not a weak candidate either. He's a United States citizen, Army veteran without any major scandals. Nevada has typically been moving right in past election cycles. Brown could thus still have a great comeback. But for now, I believe it is probably too little too late here, as Nevada also leans blue. Now let us turn our attention to the Great Lakes region, where 3 of the most important states on the presidential electoral map, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, often known as the WIMPA trio, have 4 hotly contested Senate races. Starting in Wisconsin, 2-term incumbent Democrat Tammy Baldwin is running for a 3rd term. She was comfortably re-elected in 2018 by an 11-point margin, but presidential years are famously competitive in Wisconsin. Actually, including both of the past 2, 4 of the last 6 presidential contests in Wisconsin have been decided by less than a point. In 2016, Trump carried Wisconsin by 0.7%. Subsequently, Biden turned it back by merely 0.6% in 2020. Thus, even if Baldwin, like Jackie Rosen in Nevada, has a basic advantage as a fairly popular incumbent, her performance will still be tightly correlated with Harris's performance at the top of the ticket. Until lately, Baldwin had also regularly led her Republican challenger, Eric Havday, by a sizable margin. Now the average has dropped to just 1 percentage point. For the first time all cycle, we find a hoved lead in one of these polls. Still, Baldwin has a tiny advantage here as Wisconsin turns blue so long as Harris can stay within a point or 2 of Trump. Michigan comes next. 4-term incumbent Democrat Debbie Stabenow is leaving Democrats more vulnerable in another important presidential arena. This will be the first open race for the Senate seat since 1994, also the last time Republicans prevailed in a Michigan Senate contest. In the 2020 presidential contest, Joe Biden carried Michigan by almost 3%. Democrats presently hold U.S. Senate slots and all statewide offices. That basic edge, plus the history of overperformance of Democratic nominee Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin in past House races, gives the party an advantage here over former Congressman Mike Rogers of the Republican Party. Slotkin has a great fundraising advantage. which translates to still another polling edge advantage. She leads by roughly 3% here in Michigan's really clear average, based on past 9 polls. This disparity is closed, much as in Wisconsin, but we have only seen one poll displaying the Republican candidate out ahead. I'm also downgrading it from lean blue here, but Democrats keep a small advantage. Pennsylvanian incumbent Democrat Bob Casey Jr. is a powerhouse mostly. Beginning in 1996, when he first ran as state auditor, he has won 6 straight statewide elections in the Keystone State. Casey first gained election to the United States. 2006 Senate. Defeated then current Republican Senator Rick Santorum by 18%. The biggest margin ever recorded for a Democratic Senate nominee from Pennsylvania. He then proceeded to win re-election in 2012 by 9 points and in 2018 by even more, 12 points. Given Casey's history, Pennsylvania is probably the most crucial state in the presidential contest between Trump and Harris. Yet, the Senate race has usually been considered as less competitive. Casey is supposed to run several points ahead of Harris, who herself is doubtful to lose Pennsylvania by more than 1 point or 2. Nonetheless, in terms of polling, based on the past 8 polls in Pennsylvania, we once more observe the Democratic margin declining significantly to just about 1.5 points here. Once more, we have only seen one poll indicating McCormick in the lead all through the cycle. Given some amazing parallels between these races, I would also put Pennsylvania down as tilt blue. That brings us to Ohio, another important pickup target for Republicans, and one of the 3 Democrat-held Trump-won states. Given Trump carried Ohio by a smaller margin of 8 points in 2020 and currently leads Harris by just 7 points in the presidential poll average, incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown has a somewhat simpler chore here than Jon Tester in Montana. Though it's worth remembering the Senate race for 2022, there are some indications that the Democratic falloff in Ohio might be slowing. Widely considered as an ideal candidate for Ohio, a moderate, well-liked figure, Democratic nominee Tim Ryan was expected to make a strong run in the open seat contest after Republican Rob Portman retired. Ryan still lost by 6 points to J.D. Vance, Trump's running buddy, despite his appeal. Brown has long flourished on his capacity to draw cross-party support now in 2024. Given Trump at the top of the ticket, the main question now is whether Republican-leading voters who like Brown personally will keep supporting him or choose their preferred national party. Thanks to Trump's support, Bernie Moreno, owner of a car dealership, declared triumph in the hotly contested Republican primary. Most analysts considered Moreno as the weakest general election candidate for Republicans, and he has lagged Sherrod Brown in practically every head-to-head poll. Based on the last 4 polls, Brown's current advantage sits precisely at exactly a point, hence the race is quite close to the margin of error. Thus, the final projected Republican seat count is 52 with flips in Ohio, Montana, and West Virginia. Democrats lose control at 48 seats. As usual, you are free to leave comments below this map, expressing your ideas and emotions. Should you enjoy the video, kindly leave a like down below. Here you may view more of my channel's content. As usual, also greatly appreciate your viewing. Next time we'll see you.